Now it's time to learn more about the outcomes of this research. I would like to invite over Miss Marika Fsadni, Market Research Consultant of Fsadni and Associates. We'll have time also, hopefully we'll have time for you to ask any questions which Miss Fsadni could answer after the presentation.
Okay, so good morning to you all. And before I start, I need to thank, first of all, the Minister, Mr. Moussou, OECD. They provided us with an excellent research instrument. Now, we'll see the findings together. And the ÇEMMA team, in particular, Alina, she's, it was lovely working with you. And, thank you all. Mela, to start off, now, if you see me looking down, because obviously I need to see the stats myself, okay? So bear with me a bit, I don't have anything written. So, to start off with, I went back till I get used to using it. All right. So, very briefly, a mini agenda of what I'll be presenting to you today is, first of all, we'll see what the study's research objectives, okay, both of the Malta study and of OECD, basically. Then I'll be going through the research methodology, highlights of the research findings, and some key conclusions and key takeaways, which, they will address very much, the minister's presentation just, a few minutes ago. So to start off with, what were the objectives? So what is important to say is, as Mr. Moussou rightly said, and the Minister rightly said, the Malta study, which we'll be presenting to you today, forms part of an international study organized, developed, and led by OECD's, and in particular, its international network on financial education, the INFE, which Mr. Moussou also referred to. The objective, or OECD, believes that financial literacy and financial educations have gained a prominent position in the policy agenda. Sorry about this. Would have preferred to look at the slides there, but I can't. And the importance of collecting informative, reliable data on the levels of financial literacy across adult population has been internationally recognized, very much what the minister said earlier. Now, I referred to the research instrument, the questionnaire. The questionnaire was, as I said, is developed and it evolves. That's the nice thing about this research instrument. OECD, INFE, develop it depending on the times, sign of the times. In fact, in every edition, there are new questions included and obviously others which are, simply phased out. Sorry about this. So these are the research objectives, basically set by OECD INFE, and we'll be going through them. I'm not going to read them out, of course, and we'll be going through them, one by one. We highlighted the most interesting, basically, findings, which, it is literally show a snapshot of the reality we are living in now. This point in time. Research methodology. So, as I said, we use the OECD INFE research questionnaire, research instrument, we call it, and it has been tweaked. Our questionnaire, the Malta questionnaire, has been tweaked a little bit to reflect the realities of Malta. We also added a couple of questions on ÇEMMA to see the Maltese residents' perceptions on ÇEMMA. I will present those findings as well later on. And the questionnaire, the survey, the questionnaire was produced in English and Maltese because we had, apart from Maltese residents, we also had Maltese people. We also had non-Maltese people residing in Malta. Okay. The fieldwork was carried out in July, August of last year, and we used a mix in terms of research methods. We used a mix of the ÇAWI and the CAR-T. So some were about 60% were held online, and the rest were held by telephone by our in-house interviewing team. The ÇAWI, the interviews, the way we presented the study, the actual questionnaire, it was presented that anyone could compile it or complete it, either on a small smartphone, laptop, tablet, etc., as normal, basically. In total, we had 1,005 Maltese residents, participants participating in the study, and the age group was between 18-79. This was set by OECD INFE, and obviously we adopted the same methodology, basically. Now, having 1,000 people, 1,000 respondents is a very good sample. Normally, if you have 400, 500, it's already good. But with 1,000, you have, we attained, or one can attain statistically significant findings at a confidence interval of plus or minus 3.1. Confidence interval is what we call the margin of error at a 95% confidence level, basically. And the sample we chose ensured that it was a good distribution, representation of Malta's age, gender, and hometown, even slimmer, by the way. So, survey, the profile, well, I hope you'll see them at the back, but because I'm going to throw a lot of tables in here. Now, I prefer, as a researcher, I prefer tables than graphs, bar charts, and why? Because there's the detail. I like looking at detail, not just simply giving percentage and what is 50% of what. You have to see the percentage and also the actual numbers, figures. If you see there, I will just mini explain, briefly explain, and you'll see more of these. They're very much, we present them in the same way. If you see here, this table looks at the gender. Okay, we have the male, female, and the first column, you see the totals, and then you have, obviously, in this case, we are showing the age brackets, basically, okay, of both males and females. Level of education, we covered basically all, the question we asked is what is your highest completed level of education? We had some, obviously, the older ones, who would have only completed at primary school level, then some secondary, then secondary, technical or the post-secondary, and university level and postgrad as well, basically. Nationality, we had a good 12% foreigners participating in the study. Now, all these Maltese, no, they're not Maltese, but they're Maltese residents. So we made sure those who participated would have been living in Malta for at least a year. Okay, and there we have, I believe, yes, 15 foreign nationalities participate, apart from Maltese, of course, who participated in the study in terms of level of education or occupation. Really, some were, what we call the blue-collar professions or occupations, up to gaming and professions, where basically we covered quite a spectrum. In fact, this is the employment status, where we had 60%, 61% were full-time or part-time, 20% circa retired, and then there are some students, self-employed, and unemployed or inactive, what we call, unfortunately, I don't like the word, but there's a definition of inactive people. Now, OECD also uses the net annual household income. We actually asked this question, but the brackets, which you see there, those we apply them in Malta, obviously. That's why where the tweaking, which I mentioned earlier, comes in, basically. So And we see that we had quite a range. We had 5% earning a net annual household income of up to 10,000, then between 10 and 14,500, 14,500 to 36,000, then 36,000 upwards. Now you see there we have about 10% who either didn't know the household income or refused. This is normal. In fact, normally it's 30%. 30% refuse normally to give us tell us their income, which is only fair, particularly with Malta's size. And so, getting a low percentage of 10% of refuse/don't know is was a good figure, basically. Mela, what I'll be doing now is I would like to go through these findings together. Okay, as I said, the research instrument is very well structured, and certain questions are very direct, and that's why I like it, basically. So, just to start off with, planning and managing finances. As I said, it's a very long questionnaire. Actually, OECD's questionnaire is very, very long. Then they have some optional questions which the companies, the countries participating can actually, take on board or not, depending on their national realities. And here I'm going to present some of these findings, which are still a lot, but anyhow. Mela, the first question we're presenting here, not in the questionnaire, is do you, the respondent, are you responsible for making the day-to-day decisions about your own money, in this case, own money? And I hope you're seeing the figures from there. We have a good 96% saying, yes, yes, we do. Only 4% said no. We have a couple, the youngsters, and maybe the elders, the elderly, but a bit more female than male, where maybe you have the head of household who takes care of their own money, unfortunately. But anyhow, we're only talking of 4%, so it's a good sign. We then asked the respondent, now who makes the day-to-day decisions about money in your household? Here we have 55% who said that they make decisions with someone else. Could be their partner, they might be renting a place together. Okay, 38% said that they do it alone, and only a few, 6%, said that they are not involved in the household day-to-day's money decisions, basically. In fact, if you notice, the younger ones, basically, they're either still living at home with parents, maybe, or guardians, and they're not really responsible for, the household money decisions, basically. Then we asked them, what initiatives did you take or have been taken to keep track on your household's finances? Now, this is interesting. 59%, where 60% said we keep note of our spending, basically. Before I continue, just as important, some questions are what we call multiple response questions, where the respondents can tick more than one reply. Okay? So here we have 60% said that they keep a note of spending. 47, or let's make it 50%, said that they use a banking app or money management tool to keep track of their outgoings, basically. 44% make a plan to manage their income and expenses. But at the very bottom, and I have to move, very bottom is that about 9% said that I do not do any of the above. Now, very interesting to say that this study, as Mr. Moussou mentioned, the study which we conducted last year, we also conducted in 2018. There was another OECD study in 2020, but the Ministry or ÇEMMA did not participate, very probably due to COVID. So what I'll be doing, where relevant, I'll be making some comparisons with the 2018 findings and the 2023 findings, last year's findings. The sample was the same, the people were different, of course, but some are some marked comparable differences in findings. This is one of them. In fact, if we saw, let me go back. I hope I know how to go back. The second point, where we have basically 49% who use a banking app, okay, or money management tool. When we compare this to the 2018 finding, only 29 used this app. Now, this is already a plus. One might argue, but because it's the sign of the times, we have to be, really take care of our pennies and our outgoings. But at the end of the day, in terms of financial literacy and financial education, this is I believe, very important finding. Also, as I just shown, in 2023, only 1 in 10, 9%, stated that they do not take any initiatives to keep track of their household finances, wherein in 2018, it was up to 29. So 1 in 3 in 2018 did not take any initiatives, where now it's only 1 in 10. So this is, again, a positive sign that, hey, we are taking care of our monies, of our pennies, basically. We move on to what OECD in fact calls active saving and financial shocks. We have those, occasionally, more than occasionally, I believe. And the question we asked the respondents is the ways in which they personally, not the household, personally saved money in the last 12 months. Okay, what did they do? This is, again, it was a multiple response question, so they could tick more than one reply option. So basically what they did is they paid money into the saving deposits account. I believe everyone does that. 80% said that they bought bonds or time deposits, fixed deposits. If you notice, these are more the ones with, in fact, the table, forgot to say, the table shows the findings by net annual household income. So obviously, this buying of bonds and maybe fixed deposit termed deposits, it is, the ones who maybe had the liquidity to actually save, basically. A very important point, which I highlighted there, is that, the Minister actually referred to it, I have not been saving money in the last 12 months. And this we have here 17%, which is quite high, basically. I mean, almost just under 1 in 5 are not able to save. And then some of the rest are lower percentages. However, if we compare this, the point I highlighted there, that I have not been saving in the past 12 months, if we compare it with the 2018 finding, the 2018 finding for not having saved money in the last 12 months stood at 7%, and this went up to 17%. Sign of the times. As I believe the minister mentioned, there was COVID, the wars, which hopefully, I hope, if we do the survey again in a couple of years' time, I hope we won't have a higher percentage of this. However, again, this is where, in my opinion, the financial literacy or skills, attitudes, and our behavior we must take this on board. And, like ÇEMMA, as we saw in the video, ÇEMMA plays an important part in this financial education here and awareness. We also asked the respondents, what is your ability to face a major expense equivalent to your monthly income? And how do you address it? And without borrowing or asking money from your loved ones or from family members. So how do you face such a major, do you have the ability to face this major expense equivalent to your monthly income? We had 66%, so 2 in 3 said, yes, we are able. However, we have that 25%, 1 in 4, who said, unfortunately, no, we are not able. Now, financial goals. OECD, even if it's reported, OECD, it's unfair, it's worth discussing here, even though it's not within the remit of my presentation today, actually published the report of, I believe there were 37 countries using the same research instrument which we used, and OECD insists a lot of having these financial goals. Have a goal, you work at it, basically. It's not just pension or retirement, but any type of goal, buying a car, buying a house, buying whatever you need to buy. You have, a target which actually makes you save. I always say this, that I started saving when I got the loan for my first house. So before, I used to spend, then within 24 hours, I became the most, careful person, financially careful person on earth, in Malta. Anyways, so what was the question asked here? So we asked them, do you set yourselves financial goals? As I said, for example, you buy a house, buy a car. It could be you buy a laptop, whatever it is. But you have a goal, which obviously would be a major expense for you, and the income you have, basically your annual income. 60% said yes, 40% said no. And honestly, I don't know how these people live, because we're about financial goals, major expenses. You have a fridge, a freezer which has gone down and died, or buying a new car when your old one died as well. So again, this is sign of the times as well. Now, those 603 respondents who said, yes, we do have goals, we do have financial goals, we asked them, so what actions do you take to meet your most important goals? So we told them, sort of, think of the most recent important goal, and how did you, what did you do to save, or not necessarily save, but to get the money to actually meet this financial goal? Again, this was a multiple response question. So we have 65%, they reduced the spending. This is what I did. As I told you already, you reduce spending, you start becoming, in Maltese we say in Siru, bila. Translate that? I don't know. Mela, 54%, they prepared a plan of action, which is, very good. And, while I'm presenting, you can also see the age cohorts, how they behave. That's why these stats tables are more informative than bar charts or pie charts. 46% said that they saved or invested money. Now, this happened to me. Well, basically, I had a very big financial goal, and like a few years, I was very liquid. And what am I going to do with this money until I use it for my biggest financial goal to date? And again, I said, let me try. Well, there's not much where to invest these days, unfortunately. Not just Malta, but everywhere. So I needed to invest them and save them, obviously, until I, managed to get them out and obviously use them for my financial goal, which, by the way, it relates to my pension as well. So it's like my mini investment, apart from my 41 years of paying NIs, also, so my retirement goal, financial goal, basically. So, what about retirement plans? We already mentioned, the minister as well, I believe in Mr. Musu. So, we asked them this question. How confident do you feel? We asked this question to all ages. How confident do you feel for doing, or will be doing, or having done a good job of making financial plans for your retirement? Why am I using the past, present, and future? Because obviously, look at the ages. The age brackets start between quite a while, from 18 to 79. Okay, so we have here that a good 38, rounding it up, percent, which is not, a bad percentage, are confident that they are doing a good job, or they wish to believe that they are, the way they're working, they wish to believe that they are doing a good job. I mean, research is all about perceptions at the end of the day. Now, we have 12% there at the last row, where there's 12% who do not have a retirement plan. To be fair, these are the younger age groups, of course. So it's very interesting, because if we compare that with the 2018 findings, we see that in terms of being confident or very confident, we find that 38% are confident in 2023, as opposed to the 24% at 2018. So, something must be happening, basically, whether it's GEMMA, whether it's sign of the times, whether, as the minister said, will the government pension, will that be enough for me? So, the ball has started rolling. Also, very, very interesting, in 2023, only 12% said that they don't have a retirement plan, as opposed to 45% in 2018. And this is, I believe, a very, well, you might say very good, doesn't really look, it means that at age 20, at age 30, we have to start already working on or think about our retirement. Why not? In fact, I remember, as a researcher, we do a lot of research, focus groups, and I remember, I believe this person has nothing to do with this OECD study, but we had a focus group, and there was this, I believe it was about 35 years old, single male, and we're talking about the discussion. Honestly, I forgot what the discussion was, but he said this. He said, well, I bought myself a private pension fund, and he mentioned a figure, I think it was to the tune of 40 euros a month, I believe, something like that. And he said, but I challenged him, but does it mean that you don't know how to save? Why do you need, at age 35, to start? He said, no, I get my salary, it immediately goes into that pension fund, and I don't see it. Once, he started paying, he doesn't miss it. But at the end of the day, maybe, hopefully, let's say, when he turns, 60, 65, whatever, 61, 65, that he will have, apart from his government or public government pension, he'll have this, some money which he would have saved up, which at the end of the day didn't really hurt his wage. I mean, he wasn't the minimum wage, of course, but, it's something which, the point I'm making here, that he took it in his stride. And when I asked him, but were you convinced, or did someone from a bank call you, or do some cold calling? He said, no, I decided to do it, and, and this is, I believe, is what's happening here, basically. Now, we also asked them, how do you intend, or are, or have funded your retirement, basically? Now, I've pointed out here that this is what we call a cropped table, because there are various, it's a multiple response question, and cropped, because, I can't fit it in a slide, basically. But the most important are that 74% know that they have a government or rely on their government pension. 40% they know that they will have or are or have saved, so they, in pension years, they will be withdrawing from their pensions. And 33% said they will continue to work. Now, why is the government pension, the old age benefit, so high? Well, I believe, my humble opinion, it will remain high. I mean, as we all know, we pay our NIs, our contributions every month. And yes, I mean, when we turn, 61, 65, we plan to use that. So in my opinion, that's why it's high, but it's not 100%. To be honest, in 2018, it was the same. Where I'm not presenting any comparisons, it means that the findings were by and large very much the same, basically. But again, the savings, They continue to work, sell some financial assets, some investments they would have made. Also, here we have, and highlighted there, is that 19%, well, 21 in 5 have a private pension plan, which, again, the minister mentioned in his address. I believe it's still very low. In 2018, it was 15%, and again, this take-up of private pension plans, maybe now you might argue, or one might argue, they're not as attractive. I don't know. When I tried to check one, it wasn't attractive for me, for my, the way I work. But again, I'm all in favor, particularly if from a young age, that's why I referred to that focus group respondent, who, every month he's saving up without knowing he's saving up, basically. So if he, let's say, earns 500 and he has, instead of 500 in hand, he has 460, because the 40 is invested in this pension plan. So he will be working, as in, he says that my wage, my salary is 460, and you would work within those parameters, basically. We then asked those 188 respondents who said that, yes, they have chosen a pension fund. How did they go about it? We have 52% said they considered several options from different companies before making their decision. 38%, I considered the various options from one company. It could be that they work with a particular bank or particular stockbroker, whatever, and they want to remain working with them. That is what this means, basically. Mela, very interesting question, I believe, but it's very similar response findings when compared to the 2018 study. What, in their opinion, that's why I perceived, what would be, in your opinion, the ideal age to start thinking or start making a financial plan for your retirement? I mean, not, planning, start, hey, I'm going to turn 60 eventually, 60, 70, and I want to make sure that after all these years of working, I want to, live relatively good pension, years, basically. And I believe this is very positive, I believe. And we have 40% saying that, yes, one should start, ideal age, so I'm not saying that they do, but the ideal age is to start planning for a financial retirement plan at age 20, 29, and again, 30% said to start planning at 30, 39. Now, it depends very much on the person's wage, person's status, whether they have kids, whether they have house loans, etc., etc. But again, it's important that we ingrain this, the importance of, hey, I'm earning now, I might be earning a lot of money or little money, but what happens in the, in fact, if you read OECD's and FED's report, they emphasize a lot on this active saving, as in consciously, mindfully saving. Not you save only when you have a financial goal, which is a very good, very, very good. I encourage you to read the report. Making ends meet. We don't always do, but let's see what the respondents told us. So, the question was, did you have, or have you ever had situations where the income did not cover or is not covering your living expenses? We're not talking of financial goals here, but literally, living expenses. And OECD and FAIR indicated this, or rather, gave a time bound, this question is time bound, within the last 12 months. Okay, because there are times where you will be covering, times you are not. Here we have that 49, so 1 in 2, had encountered situations where their income wasn't covering their living expenses. Now, is this worrying? Yes, it is. But again, in the context of the times we are living now, unfortunately, I think it has happened to all of us, even in this room. Mela, to compare with this year's 2023's findings with the 2018 findings, in fact, 1 in 2, 2023 said yes. In 2018, 1 in 3 said yes. So there was an increase, a good percentage points. Again, it reflects the times we are living in now. In fact, when you think about it, when we conducted the study in 2018, who would have, ever thought that we, the world, would have gone through the COVID pandemic, these wars which we're still living in, and hopefully everyone's hoping for better times, I hope. I don't want to be negative, but again, this is where the financial literacy and financial education becomes more important. We then asked them what actions those 496 who said, yes, we managed to make ends meet, how did they address these actions? We have that 57% said they withdrew from their savings account, so if your living expenses, your income is not covering, so you have to, withdraw from your savings. 55 or 56% said that they cut back on spending and spend less. That, shows maturity. And if you see that across the salary brackets mentioned there, those two are very much. It's only the bracket, the cohort, which earning less than 10,000, that they could not withdraw from their savings, without whether they would have. Anyhow, again, this is a crop table because there are other options they could choose from, but these were the most significant, basically. And then we asked them, as I said, very direct questions. So if your main source of income is lost, for whatever reason, how long would you be able to cover your living expenses without borrowing money and or moving house? For those who rent, of course. So if your main source of income is lost, how long would you be able to survive without income? We have 31% who said 6 months or more, 25% at least, or rather between 3 and 6 months, and we have 20% who said between 1 and 3 months. Again, this is worrying, but again, this is where the financial literacy and awareness and skill of saving, of having financial goals, financial targets, actually sets in and becomes more essential, more important. There was a section using financial awareness and using financial products and services. Again, there are many questions. I'm just whetting your appetite here on these. Now, this section was new. It was not new for Malta, at least. It wasn't asked. These questions weren't asked in 2018 study. But the question asked is, what is your frequency of use of digital financial services? And actually, the questionnaire identifies these services. Just Act, to give you an idea, checking, so services, the first one is checking one's accounts, balance, and transactions online. In fact, we saw the options, the reply options were rarely, sometimes, often, and always, basically. So a good 67% do this. Paying bills online, a good 60% said that they do this always. I believe very positive findings. Transferring money to third parties online, 50%. Said always. Purchasing products and services online, 41%. And managing financial products and services like savings, investments online. This is the lowest one, which is still, the always is 40%, but still, I believe it's very, very positive. By the way, if you notice here, the sample is that of 983, because the rest, we asked a question which is not present here, I did not include it here, is whether they have access to internet. Okay, that is why it's not 1,005. Financial attitudes, behavior, again, set of questions, but interesting to note here, we're looking at their attitudes. So my attitudes towards these financial statements, how do I perceive them? What is my attitude towards them? And the statements were these. The first one is, I set long-term financial goals and strive to achieve them. We already referred to it. And we have the reply options where disagree, completely disagree, neutral, or agree, completely agree. So 60% said they agree. I keep a close personal watch on my financial affairs. A good 83% said agree, completely agree. Is it a good sign? It's a good sign, but again, in the context of the sign of the times we are living in. Another statement, my financial situation limits my ability to do things that are important for me. 1 and 2 said they completely agree. I find it more satisfying to spend money than to save it for the long term. I think everyone would love to do that, but only 17, thank God, only 17 agreed with this statement. If it were higher, I would freak out, but anyhow. So another statement, I am satisfied with my present financial situation. Only 1 in 3, basically 36% said they agree or completely agree. Money is there to be spent. Luckily, only 27% said agree, completely agree. And I have too much debt right now, only 16. So at least it's low. Another set of statements, this time behavior, not attitudes, but financial behavior. So what is their behavior? How do they behave, react to these statements? And the reply options were never, rarely, sometimes, often, always. I pay my bills on time. 52%, 53%, and I'm one of them. I get all, compile them all, do it. Maybe not on time, but I don't get any, hopefully, penalty charges. Well, it is an incentive to pay on time. Before I buy something, I carefully consider whether I can afford it. 35%, well, let's add the 41% and 35%. So, so often and always, maybe not always, but, well, I believe a good finding, a good result. My finances control my life. Well, we have about 36% saying yes. I tend to worry about paying my normal expenses. So again, we have about 33% saying often and always. And I have money left over at the end of the month. Well, so it's quite okay, considering about 45 there, 43%, so basically, well, less than half. But again, honestly, when you are completing this questionnaire, it's like a checklist, it makes you think of, how you address your financial, situation or behavior in this case. Last section, we added, this is obviously for Malta only, we added 2 questions on ÇEMMA. Awareness and knowledge. And we asked them, are you aware? Do you know what ÇEMMA No Plan Act means, what it is? And the first table shows the whole sample, including foreigners. It's a bit on the low side, I have to admit. So it's 46% who said, yes, we've heard of ÇEMMA. 54 said no. Removing the foreigners, foreign residents, 50% said, yes, we've heard of ÇEMMA, 49, well, 50% said no. Now, is this a negative finding? Well, I always see, as a character, as a person, or whoever knows me here, I always see, the glass with, half full and not half empty. When I see this type of finding, I say there's a lot of potential which ÇEMMA can work on. However, those who said that they are aware of ÇEMMA, they know what it is, or rather they know it exists, they've heard about it, we asked them, what is ÇEMMA for you? And we gave them these reply options. Again, so the cohort here is the population for this question is 461. Those who said, of course, yes, I am aware. And we have, where I've hit there, highlighted there, the all of the above, 30% got it right. But looking at it, I said, hey, this is a bit of an unfair question because, you know, even when I had to speak to Helene and say, "Look, what is the correct question for this?" You know, and I'm the researcher. And if you notice, on top of the all of the above, there is another reply option with 54%, which is an initiative which helps individuals of all ages, young and old, to learn good financial behavior and how to manage money properly. And that carried 54%. So my humble, opinion, I don't work with ÇEMMA, but 54 plus the 30, there's a good 84% there who said, yes, they are not only aware, but know what ÇEMMA does. So, you know, so those who have heard about it they know what ÇEMMA does. So now the objective is to get more people out there, more residents to know about us, about ÇEMMA. Last section, promise some key conclusions and takeaways. Again, we've already addressed them, but just, you know, for you to take these home with you. We've witnessed more and better initiatives are being taken on to keep track of one's finances, either his or her or the household, depending on your role within the household. Not being able to save money in the last 12 months, we saw the increase from 7% to 17% from 2018 to 2017. Again, sign of the times, COVID, wars, you know, unfortunately, this is the world we live in. However, we can't stop there. 1 in 4 Maltese residents are not able to afford a major expense equivalent to their monthly income without borrowing money. Okay? Again, this is where this ÇEMMA comes in. This is where the insistence of, you know, financial planning, addressing financial goals, thinking of when you're in your own old age, basically, or retirement plan, and you know, all this is if these findings were not what they are, more positive, I would worry, you know, because this is the world we are living in at the moment. Making ends meet, 1 in 2 Maltese residents experienced situations in the last 12 months where their income did not quite cover their living expenses. This finding emerged largely among households earning, of course, a net annual income of less than 36k euros, basically. And lastly, there's more confidence when having done a good job of making financial plans for retirement. So on a positive note, we saw the difference, the shift from 24% confidence in 2018, which went up to 14%, by 24 percentage points to 38% in 2023. Also, 2023, as we saw, only 12% admitted to not having a retirement plan, against the 45%, basically 1 in 2, in 2018. So, you know, to close on this, whenever we present, you know, as a researcher, we present findings to our clients, I also like, research is like a jigsaw puzzle. You know, remember when you used to do jigsaws and you first you do your border and then you put in the pieces. If you notice here, the border and the pieces fit in. You know, some are positive, you know, signs and, you know, more awareness and financial literacy from 2018. But again, some financial issues which we still need to address. I can stop here.
First of all, thank you very much for the presentation and for the results. They make very interesting reading. And obviously, for us geeks who like to delve into the figures, There's quite a lot to go into. I'm not sure whether you are the right person to address my question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Yes.
I've had a look at the OECD report itself, and to my mind, there's much more wealth of information there. But I'll just refer to two particular tables which introduce the report. We have the minimum target financial literacy, where, if my calculations are correct, Malta scored was in fourth place in the overall financial literacy score. So we're talking about a score of 68% basically. The top nation was Germany with 76%. And then obviously there were two other countries with higher scores. So that to me is positive. But then when I look at the second table, the minimum target financial literacy, and this refers to percentage of adults who scored at least 70 points out of 100 on financial literacy. I struggle to reconcile the previous score with the score that Malta got. Because Malta got a score of 45 in this, when we're talking about minimum target financial literacy, which means that much less those adults who actually got 70 points were very, very minimal. And this pushed our score down, overall placing, down to 8. Which is, again, not extraordinarily bad. But I don't know whether you can give me a flavor of whether we can reconcile these two things or whether it's something which I'm missing. Thank you.
Of course. Mela, I would like to give my views on this. However, I believe the OECD speaker would be, I believe, in a better position. Now, one section which I left out here, or as I wouldn't have taken 45, but much more. There's a section on what is called financial knowledge, not financial literacy, it's knowledge. And the respondents were asked 5 questions. For example, one would be simple interest, one would be compound interest, so the 5 questions would get more difficult. Now, offhand, I forgot the figures, because as I said, it's a 100-page report of statistics. However, it's true, the expected minimum by OECD, in fact, is 70%, and we scored rather badly, so to speak, but in the section per se, even in the 2018 one, I believe offhand, so, I don't have the figures in front of me, and the first 3 questions we scored very, very well, the easy ones. When it comes to the more difficult, it was a lot of I don't know. To be fair, they were a bit not tricky, but, it's literally, so it is assessing financial knowledge. So I agree with you. Maybe, OECD might tell us why they said the limit, the expected, but at 70% rather than 50, But I agree with you. We did score low. Why didn't I include it here? Because it is an exercise, and by the time I showed the questions, explain the concept, it would have taken me long, honestly. But it's also, as I said, it's a very, very interesting research instrument. Very.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Another question?
Thank you very much for your presentation. So I can gather from this question that the Maltese are not much aware about technically about the differences, for example, between savings and investments.
Yes. I wouldn't have imagined you would have asked this question because I would have presented it basically.
Very interesting.
But then these are like individual questions. As I said, it was one section. So I would have had to not address the other more global sort of questions.
But that's a very important question, because regarding the merits of longer-term investments and also the risks.
Exactly. Exactly.
So-
No, you're very right, very right. But it is, rather than it is knowledge. It is, what financial knowledge we have. And I forgot the score, honestly, I forgot the score. I wouldn't like to say it. You said it's 45% because too many figures, too many figures.
To the minimum target financial literacy. So the minimum target was 70.
70. And Malta scored 45. So there you go. So, no, it's, now again, it is relative. Now, my briefing here was not to make, the comparisons I was asked to make was with the 2018 study, but so I did not prepare myself with the analysis of comparing with other countries. But what would be interesting to see is how we compared with, other European countries, such as ours.
To be fair,
Yes.
it's in the proper context. Only one country. Only
Scored over 70,
Yes.
Germany.
Yes, Germany.
Right.
And that there seems to be a, what is the word? A convergence between the previous, the overall financial literacy. There are some correlations there.
Yes,
But
yes.
then there is, intuitively, as I said, there are some cases, and Malta's not alone.
Oh, no,
I want
no,
to
no,
stress
no,
also
yes.
that there was a fairly high score, but then when you look at minimum target financial literacy, it was much lower.
It's 45, isn't it?
Fantastic. Thank you. Any other questions? So thank you
Thank
so
you very
much
much.
for your answers.